You know, humans have been kicking around on this planet for something like 200,000 years. And there's a great deal of argument about when we became conscious beings, when we evolved into conscious beings. But it's clear that we have been imbued with consciousness. We've been given this gift by the Creator. And that gift of consciousness allows us to explore not only the universe, but our relationship to it, the meaning of it, what it means, how we are related to it. You know, from the beginning of time, humans have, stood on mountains and in valleys and looked up at this imponderable sky and wondered, what is this all about? How do I connect to this? How am I connected to it? And is there some intelligence out there that understands who I am? And by the way, who really am I? How am I connected to who I am? We're going to be talking about the in there and the out, the in here and the out there kind of concept, but what we're really searching for is the fundamental nature of reality. What is reality all about? Somebody just pointed at something.
I see the book Biocentrism.
Oh, I have all kinds of books here. These are just a few of the reference materials I skimmed over today before coming in and creating this presentation. So, yeah, I've absorbed it all. That's just a few of the reading materials, because there is so much information out there, and these questions that we're going to be talking about tonight, that we're going to be questioning and looking into the very nature of them, are kind of imponderable questions. You know, how do we get answers to these kind of questions? But we're going to see the same answers appear in different language in different disciplines. We're going to find out that quantum physics and this ancient wisdom of the Tao tell us exactly the same thing, that the power of consciousness is what really creates the universe, creates our reality. So the fundamental nature of reality is what it is that we are searching for. And we're going to be examining our consciousness, the in here and the out here. You know what? The most mysterious thing in the whole universe is our subjective experience of life. No one, for instance, if I look at the color red, you and I can agree, yeah, that color is red, but you and I might have a completely different experience about what that red means, and neither one of us can understand what's going on in the others in there. And so I try desperately to talk to you tonight about what's in here, but it's so difficult to do that, because I can't experience life as you're experiencing life, nor can you experience life as I am. So the in here and out there is the connection between them is really consciousness. It is how I take my inner experience and create my realities. That's something that the ancient Chinese talked about 2,500 years ago, and it's something that has been developed over the past, 100 years, 117 years to be exact, in the theory of quantum physics. They both lead us to the same absolute conclusion, and the absolute conclusion that they both lead us to is that the determining factor in our experience of life is your consciousness. Is that a big surprise to anybody? Well, it shouldn't be, but in reality it is, because when we dig down, we start peeling off layers of the onion, we discover amazing things that challenge us to understand, because we have come to believe that our experience of life, or understanding of life, is the only thing that really matters, and it ain't. Well, it ain't. It ain't. What I really want to talk about is this idea. Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a persistent one. Albert Einstein, you might have heard of him, actually said that reality is an illusion. We make stuff up as we go along, and we pretend that that is reality. Is it? I'm not so sure I know what the nature of reality is. I'm not so sure, even if I did, that I could explain it. In just a minute, I'm going to explain what that means when we get into the idea about Tao, the difference between reality and language, this deep distrust of language, because language creates these artificial constructs. So the next thing I want to talk about is the idea about exactly where does consciousness exist? Where does consciousness exist? We're going to hear a whole bunch of people saying a whole bunch of different things about what consciousness is, But where is it? Where is consciousness? As it turns out, consciousness appears to be beyond space and beyond time. It is some other dimension that we don't really understand. There's an organization which you may have heard of called the Institute of Noetic Science, IONS. Lynn McTaggart is, Edgar Mitchell was founded it. And they are seeking the reality, the ultimate nature of reality. And they are attempting to understand the nature of consciousness. And I applaud their work. I think they're doing some great work. But they're nowhere near understanding consciousness. Nobody really is. That's the missing element. If we understood consciousness, we could understand God. We could understand our relationship to God. And what would be probably revealed to us is that we are God. We really are. Quantum physics tells us, the Tao tells us. People have been talking about this for thousands and thousands of years. Way before Ernest Holmes. Way before this teaching. There are great imponderable questions. I mentioned that we sit out in these mountains and we ask these questions. Look up in the sky. Geez, how do I relate to that? What is that all about? How does it affect me? Am I connected to it somehow? If I am, what is that connection all about? The connection is consciousness. But since we as humans can't really understand our own greatness, you know, we have descended from the divine. We've come from God, from the source, from wherever it is, and we are occupying these bodies, and we've descended from the divine, and in doing so, we get trapped in this iteration of life, this physical form, and we mistakenly think that's reality. That's reality because we forget who we are. Tonight, I want to remind you who you are. I want to remind you who you are, and by doing that, we explore these great imponderable questions. The truth of the matter is that your mind doesn't exist in the universe. The universe exists in your mind. Whoa! That's a powerful concept, and I'm sure you've heard people say that in one way or another. If any of you have been, studying physics or metaphysics, you've heard that kind of concept. That what the really true creative process that we go through in life, the way we interact with the universe, the way we create our own realities is through our mind. That shouldn't be a surprise, but when I say it like that, we think of the vast, imponderable universe. That's all in my mind? Yeah. It's all in your mind. We always think of that idea. If a tree falls in a forest, and does it still make a sound if no one's around to listen to it? There are a whole bunch of people, including quantum physics and the Taoists, who would say, in the absence of perceiving consciousness, there is no tree, there is no forest, and there is no sound. We create all of that. The Tao tells us, this ancient wisdom tells us that, and quantum physics tells us the same thing, as we are about to discover. The key here is the observer, the I am. In metaphysics, we might refer to it as the I am, that statement. And whatever you have that follows the I am healthy, successful, wealthy, intelligent, whatever that is, that claims your reality. It establishes your reality. And how do we do that? We notice it. We become the observer. One of the things we're going to see is something called the double slit experiment, which is a fundamental experiment that was introduced in physics in 1705, believe it or not. And it was used to determine that light was indeed a wave. But it has been run many, many, many more times. And from a quantum perspective, what it really tells us is that our consciousness is the determining factor in the output of quantum systems, and at the very fundamental essence of who we are quantum systems. The atoms and all of those things that make us up. I'm standing here and you think that I'm all solid. Well, I'm not, believe me. Yeah, I know if you punch me in the nose, I'm probably going to fall over and start bleeding. Then I'm going to get up and, anyway. But the fact of the matter is, you'll never really punch me in the nose because your fist will never make contact with my physical nose. There will be electromagnetic forces that keep us apart, and it'll feel like that, it'll look like that to both of us, but that also is an illusion. the idea about reality, what we perceive to be reality, is an illusion. That's what Albert Einstein says, and I have a tendency to kind of want to go along with him because he was a pretty smart dude, if you've ever heard of him. So the key is the observer. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how this all ties in to this ancient wisdom of the Tao. Look, what is the Tao? Well, here's a sentence. How do you like that one? The Tao does nothing, and yet there is nothing that the Tao does not do. Does anybody understand that? Because if you do, please explain it to me. It's a koan. A koan, like another one, an example of that would be, what is the sound of one hand clapping? I hate to be performing for an audience that only claps with one hand. So, but it's not, they're not looking for an answer to that. The purpose of these koans is to ask us to look beyond our current reality. If we look beyond our current reality and just train our mind to look at the world in a little different way. But the fact of the matter is, you know, through all the years that we've been on this planet, our fingers have been pressed against the fiery Braille alphabet of what people have told us is reality, and we've come to believe it. It's an illusion. But it's an illusion that people are aware of. At least the Taoists are aware of it. So what is the Tao? Nobody knows. The Tao is many things. The Tao technically means the way. So that means it's a way as in a way through a path, through a forest, or a way from New York to Chicago. But it's also a way as in a methodology, a series of a process that one needs to go through in order to arrive at some destination, like getting a degree, a college degree. You have to go through all these steps. So that's a Tao. But it's a lot more than that. It's a discussion, a thread, a sutra, so to speak, as in a discussion about something. And it's more about that. It's about the way to live one's life and how we think about the way to live one's life, and how we think about thinking about the way to live one's life. So the Tao is many, many, many things, but primarily it is the fundamental nature of reality. That in and of itself doesn't seem to have a lot of power, a lot of something that you can sink your teeth in to maybe understand a little better, but as we go through the evening, I think it'll be a little clearer. So that is what the Tao is. Now there are some key elements of the Tao. The Tao believes that the universe really consists of this primordial soup, kind of, the primordial nature of the universe, this creative force from which our consciousness picks out our reality. So the true nature of the universe, according to the Taoists, this ancient philosophy that was created by this guy named Lao Tzu, and by the way, Lao Tzu is not a name, it just means old master. So it was kind of a title rather than anything else. But some 2,500 years ago, he created this concept, and since then it has been applied to many, many aspects of life. Because what it focuses on is the primordial nature of the universe. And it focuses on the background. Look, the background, what I mean by the background is that everything begins with a thought, right? Each of these books are here now because of a thought. Someone had a thought. Oh, I'm going to write a book and bore the hell out of people. So I'm going to. It starts with the beginning. The chair. The important things of that chair is not the physical chair there, but the chair-ness. The idea of the chair. Stephen Covey in one of his books talked about the first and the second creation. That the first creation starts right up here, and the second creation is the physical manifestation of that. So what the Taoist is focusing on, it's focusing on the chair-ness. That is the truth of reality, not the physical chair. I look at it, I say, oh, this is a chair, it's very simple. A Taoist would look at it and say, that's an illusion. The real chair, the perfection of that chair, lies in the chair-ness, the idea of the chair. The perfections of the universe are in the ideas, not in the physical manifestations. The physical manifestations are always flawed, right? There's something wrong with that chair. It's off a millionth of a millimeter, perhaps, on the leg, or there's something defective about it. But there's absolutely nothing defective about the thought. Our thoughts are pure. the manifestations of those sorts sometimes get us in a bit of trouble. The other thing is spontaneity. The Taoists are looking for this concept, which we'll talk about in just a second, called Wu Wei. It's something that the Confucianists sought also. It is effortless, spontaneous action. The Taoists believe that to get to this spontaneity, all we need do is be natural. That's it. Embrace nature. The true ultimate nature of the Tao is to live a life in harmony with the universe. That's really what it's all about. If we, as the Confucianists would say, is we start adding occlusions, we start adding, we add things to it. So the Tao, the Confucianists would approach this and say, I gotta practice it, and keep doing it until it becomes natural. You know, that's kind of where we are in the West, I think, most. You want to be a great pitcher, you know, the Taoist would say, hell with all that. You don't need any of that. What you need is just to be natural, to be who you are. And so it's suggesting that we just need to be spontaneous in responding to life. And if we're spontaneous, we're living in harmony with the universe. The other thing is the strong suspicion of language. Look, when we talk, when we speak, we create constructs, these physical constructs. And the Taoist is so suspicious of that. A Taoist would never come to one of my lectures. You know why? Because it sucks. No, because they're suggesting that in just giving voice to what the Tao is, I'm violating the spirit of the Tao. Because language creates all of these constructs. I'm going to give you a few examples. But one example is, if I say that something is beautiful, by nature, what that means is I've set up a construct that says a whole bunch of other things are not beautiful. Those are ugly things. That's what happens with language that Taoists really object to, is that it creates these artificial constructs, and we mistakenly believe that that's reality when it's not. Now that's kind of abstract at the moment, but in just a couple minutes I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and perhaps it'll become a little more clearer. Maybe not. I could be wrong. If you guys are Taoists, you're not listening to me anyway. This concept of Wu Wei. This is the concept of this spontaneous, effortless action. And the Confucianist would say, you get there by practice over and over and over. That's how piano players get. But a Taoist would suck as pianists, I guess, because they would never practice. They say, I'm just going to hit the keys and eventually something will happen. Now, that's kind of a ridiculous example, but it gives you an idea about what the Tao says. Just be natural. Just live in harmony with the universe. That's all you have to do. And the last thing here is, what is the day? The day means virtue. So if I put this together, and by the way, you see some I'm saying day or tay, those are the same words. There's two different translations. There's something called the Wade-Giles translation from Chinese to English, and that's what was used since the early 20th century. But in the 1960s, the mainland China revisited that, and they released something called the Pinyin translation, and that they're using D's there, the Tao as in D-A-O. Doesn't matter. They're saying the same thing. So what is the day? The day is virtue. So if I look at what the Tao Te Ching means, it is the Tao is the way, the day is virtue, and I guess the closest I can come to when I talk about Qing is, I guess, like a book, a sacred book, though, something, a book that is revered. So let's call it a scripture as an example. So it's really the book of the way and of virtue. There's two books associated with this. The first word in the Tao is the Tao, or the way, and the first word in the second book is the day, or the idea of virtue. I'm going to actually look at a couple of passages of the Tao to give you a better idea about what they mean when they talk about all this stuff. Do you recognize that character? That is the Tao. So in what we really want to say is, how did this come into being? Well, it was juxtaposed against Confucianism. The emperors, like 2,500 years ago, were very interested in Confucianism because Confucianism helped control the population. if you wanted to be rewarded, if you wanted to grow in that society, you were a Confucianist, and you studied how to hold the fan, how to dress properly, how to speak to particular people in certain ways, what to do, and you had to practice it. And those who were really good at it, they advanced in society. Those who were not good at that didn't. That was the way to go. So Lao Tzu comes along and he sees this, believes that it leads to a lot of corruption, etc., etc. And some of the Chinese emperors, well, they didn't like this whole idea about Taoism at all, because it represented a threat to the established order. What it really was all about was the big difference is, how do we achieve Wu Wei? We achieve it from the Confucianists by practice, by accretions, by adding stuff on. The Taoist says, no, we do not. We achieve it by getting rid of all that stuff and reacting to nature, to being in harmony with the universe. Stop being so formal. Stop, worrying about holding your fan and all that. That's nonsense. That doesn't contribute to a good life, a life lived in harmony with the universe. The great paradox of language, that's what we just talked about. I'm going to give you a few examples for this. Here's one. I'm standing at the edge of the forest with two other people, and I need firewood. So to me, I look at the forest as a source of firewood. So to me, the forest is firewood. There's another person standing next to me and said, I'm really hungry, so I'm looking for some food. So there's some berries, or maybe some foliage I can eat, or maybe some game or whatever. So to me, the forest is food. And there's another person who says, it's so hot out here, I just want to get under the tree and get some shade. So each of them looks at the forest and says, I need firewood, or I need food, or I need shelter or shade. And to each of them, they say, that's what the forest represents. Does that describe the forest? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't change the forest. Here's another example. So the forest is, to each of us of individuals, what we choose to see it as, what our consciousness perceives it as. I perceive it as a source of food, or a source of wood, or a source of shade, or whatever it is. But none of those accurately describe reality. None of those have anything to do with the ultimate nature of reality. There's a very famous, I'm gonna come back to this in just a second, but, there it is. Everyone ever heard of this idea about the elephant? You got a bunch of blind people touching an elephant, and they're asked to describe what you are feeling. One person is holding the tail and says, wow, an elephant is just like a rope. Another one is holding the trunk and said, an elephant is just like a snake. Someone else is holding the leg and said, oh, an elephant is just like a tree. Another person just feels the side and says, geez, I need a ladder. This is just like a wall. So does any of that describe what the reality of the elephant? Anybody think that those describe the reality of the elephant? It doesn't. But to each of us, I'm holding a rope, and that's all that matters to me. So the Taoists have a very, very justifiable suspicion of language, because language creates artificial constructs. Language tells me that this 10,000-pound beast is a piece of rope. Where's the reality in that? The Taoist sees this and exposes the unreality of that. I'm going to actually give you one page from the Tao. And by the way, I have two different examples here of the Tao, and I've read both of them, and they're really quite different, the language, because when we translate from, there's an old saying the Italians have, that translators are traitors, that when we translate from one language to another, we have to, if we don't speak both of those languages, we have to rely on other people to tell us what it said. And it's the old thing about, I can whisper a secret to you, you whisper it to Flo, Flo whispers it, and by the time it gets around the room, it's a completely different message. So we really can't experience it firsthand. And translating from Asian languages into English is a particular challenge, as you may agree with that. So let's move back and let's take a look at the very first chapter of the Tao. The structure of this one, I'm going to spend a little time talking about the Tao, And as I do, I'm talking about quantum physics. Then I'm going to switch over and talk about quantum physics and roll in the Tao to it. And then we'll wrap it up all into the connector, which is consciousness. So look at this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is the first chapter of the Tao in this translation of it. And basically what it says is ways can be guided, they are not fixed ways. Name can be named, they are not fixed names. In other words, I can say that this elephant is a snake, but does that give it reality? That's not a fixed name. It's something that I made up. I created that whole idea. So from the very beginning of the Tao, it talks to us about this idea, about making stuff up in your mind and pretending that it's reality. Because it ain't. There's a wonderful thing, and even that concept, see this, the Tao is so kind of subtle. Even that concept, down here, we call it in here, conceiving them, fixing on presence and absence. The presence is the phenomena, the absence is the background. And let me give you an example about why the absence is so much more important than the presence. Think about a wheel. If someone had just created this round kind of thing with no hole in it, we wouldn't have a wheel. What good would that be? That would be such a limited wheel. We need a hole in it so we can shove an axle in there and we can actually use the wheel. In the absence of the hole, well, that's kind of a strange way to put it, but in the absence of the hole, there is no wheel. The wheel would have been pretty much useless to us. So the Taoist would focus on the absence, on the hole of the wheel, and from the hole of the wheel is where we get the use from the wheel, right? Because otherwise we can't put an axle in there and it's kind of useless. We can kind of roll it around like that and maybe use it as a toy. We're not going to be transporting anything in it. The wheel was the wheel and fire are perhaps the two most instrumental inventions in the development of humankind. And without the absence of matter in the middle of that, none of it would have happened. That's a very Taoist kind of concept. So we look at the background and the phenomena, and it said, conceiving of them as being one, we call that fathomless. Calling it fathomless is still not the fathomless, the door to a cluster of puzzles. So I'm going to give it a name. I said, that's fathomless. That's imponderable. But in doing so, I've just created another language construct that creates a false reality. It's just another way of speaking. That's why the Taoists, there would never be like a Taoist call-in talk show or anything. There just wouldn't be. A Taoist teacher would probably just sit here and say, figure it out yourself. So we talked about this whole idea, what is an elephant really like? And names can be named, they are not fixed names. Just because I call something doesn't mean that that's really what it is. That's what it is perhaps in my mind, in my experience, but it has no validity for the world at large. I am occluding reality when I say something like that. Now, we stand out here and this guy's got a serious vitamin deficiency. But we stand out here and we look out at this universe and we are co-creators of the universe. The universe really functions as a product of our mind, of the choices that we make in life. As I mentioned, the tree steps out of the forest. We're in a forest. There are millions of trees around, perhaps. And we notice one tree. Oh, wow, that beautiful, beautiful pine tree. Look at this. And in that moment, when we notice that beautiful pine tree, the rest of the forest strips away. It's just gone. In that moment, there's nothing else that exists but me and that tree when I'm noticing that and I'm fully consciously engaged with it. So our consciousness really determines what happens to us in life. The Tao says it, quantum physics says it, and art says it as well. Would you kindly take a look at these two images just for a second? There's a reason why I put them up, because it demonstrates graphically the ability of our mind to create our reality. I would ask you to look first at this one. Just somebody call out, what do you see?
Two faces.
Two faces?
A vase.
A vase?
I see both.
You're both. They're both there. And Gary says, I see both. No, you don't, Gary. You do. See, I know what your subjective experience is all about. You may not, but I do. So what is really, if you take a look at this, at any moment, I can look at this and I can say, yeah, it's a vase or a goblet or a chalice or whatever you want to call it. I can choose to look at it another way, and I say, oh, it's a couple of faces in profile. And guess what? I'm right in both cases, and I'm wrong in both cases. I can look at it one way or the other at any given moment, but I can never look at it both ways at the exact same time. If I choose to look at it as a chalice or a vase, or call it what you will, if I choose to do that, then at that moment, that chalice steps out of the background and becomes my reality. How did that happen? In regard to our consciousness. Nothing changed about the image. Here's another one. I first encountered this one in graduate school when I was in graduate school at Pepperdine University, and someone showed that to me and said, here's a picture of an old lady. I said, what? She doesn't look so old to me. What I was looking at is this image of a woman looking kind of over her right shoulder. There's her eyelashes, her nose, her ear, etc. But somebody else came along and said, and there's a necklace for her. Someone else came along and said, no, that isn't at all what I see. And for a while, I couldn't see what they were seeing. Does anybody here see two images here? Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Is anybody seeing just one of them? Anybody just really see just one, or can you see both? You just see one.
Well, I don't see a woman with a bump on her nose.
Do you see a woman? I'll try and, like, looking this way. There is the nose right there. No, you don't see it. Shut up, Steve. You'll talk next Wednesday. So, Greg, did you have an issue? Of course you have issues.
I see three.
Pardon me?
I see three.
Three. Well, that's a different way. You have just collapsed a quantum wave of probability that no one else, that I've never seen and ever heard anybody. I believe you. You can see three in here. Maybe. But the fact of the matter is, if I look at this, I can never unlook at it again. The first time I looked at it, I saw one image, then someone sat with me for like 10 minutes to finally get me to see this image, and I can never not see it. So now I can choose to go back and forth from one image to another. The reality is, it's popping out of reality based upon what? Based upon me, on my consciousness.
What is the other image?
Oh, okay. There's one image you might look at. It may be difficult to see this. There are eyes here. There's the nose here. There's one nose here. There's a necklace. This is kind of a... Do you see any of that?
That's
It's
the
difficult.
nose.
I know, until you see it. But once you actually see it, you'll never unsee it. And you can go back and forth in reality from one to the other, and you'll never unsee it. You can unsee it if you choose, but you can look at the other one. That's why I put both of these. This is a little more complex. This one, I think it kind of jumps out. So I know you're also, what the hell? I don't want to spend 35 more minutes trying to determine that. One of these characters is looking, if I'm like kind of this way, and one of these characters is looking like this. So you're struggling with consciousness right now. You're making decisions about what it is that you want to pull out of the background and bring into the foreground, and you're doing it how? With your consciousness. Yay! You guys are good. So seeing is creating. We see something and we create it. And I want to talk about this guy. Anybody know who he is? Rene Descartes. Rene Descartes was a 16th century philosopher, mathematician. He gave us the Cartesian coordinate system that tortured you when you were taking algebra in high school. And he also came up with this amazing phrase called, I think, therefore I am. What he started was this philosophical... Rene Descartes, 1519, came up with this amazing idea that turned the whole, it was kind of a pivot in the whole idea about philosophy. It changed the way we approach science and philosophy and a whole bunch of things. And he came up with this concept about cogito ergo sum, What is that all about? I think, therefore I am. Here's what it's really all about. He drew a radical distinction between the in here, the internal world, the world of our subjective experiences, and the physical world out there. He drew this distinction between the two of them and said there's an absolute separation here, and for reality, if I want to understand what's out there, I'm going to pretend for a moment, or I'm going to philosophize, I'm going to suggest that I know absolutely nothing. The idea is to reveal truth, the ultimate reality of truth. So he's suggesting I know absolutely nothing. That's a concept that Aristotle said some 2,500 years ago, some 2,000 years before this guy was born. Aristotle said, I know nothing. So Descartes says, okay, I know nothing. But is there anything that I can allow back into the realm of things that I know? Is there anything at all that I can say is real? Well, let's see. Maybe thinking. Gee, can I believe that I'm thinking? Okay, I'm thinking. But someone might say, well, you're thinking, but your thoughts are controlled by some evil wizard. What you really are is a brain in a vat somewhere on some shelf in Columbus, Ohio, or someplace. And there's these wicked wizards that Columbus, Ohio didn't exist at the time, by the way. But nonetheless, this idea about maybe there's some wizard that's manipulating my thoughts, manipulating my mind. Even if that is true, I'm still thinking, right? So thinking must be a reality, and if thinking is a reality, if I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. And that idea, I think, therefore I am, became the pivoting point for the approach of philosophy, for the approach of science. It changed the world in ways that are still rippling through all of these disciplines today. This idea about the in here and the out there and the ultimate nature of reality. What can I accept as being true? So here we are, we're standing here at the dawn of the 20th century, brings this massive change. Now we're getting into the quantum physics kind of thing. It brings this massive change. What we discovered as we're entering the 20th century, we entered this whole idea about the quantum age. It occurred in 1900, and Max Planck said that matter absorbs and emits energy in discrete chunks known as quanta. We knew that matter absorbed and emits energy for lots and lots of years, for a long time. But what we didn't understand was that it did it in discrete chunks of energy, these bundles called quanta. And that changed everything. Suddenly, we had to look at the world in an entirely different way. What we had to come to grips with is that when we apply empirical methods, the scientific method, which was developed in the 15th century, when we apply those, what we find is that no longer works. It no longer works when we apply it to quantum systems. Why is that? Because what we've discovered is that the determining factor in quantum physics is us. So we cannot possibly observe the universe without disturbing it. There's this double slit experiment. I mentioned that it started in 1705, but then there's been many iterations of it. And when we apply it into the quantum world, we run these experiments, and the experiment reveals one thing. It shows us that light is a wave. But if we run it another way and we observe this experiment being done, if we actually have passive observing devices, it changes the entire experiment. And the only difference between these two setups is the output, which is radically different, and our consciousness, the observation. So just observing these experiments and it'll happen every single time. We run an experiment and we're out of the room and there's no sensors, and we come back and we look at the results, say, okay, now put the sensors in there, we're still running the room. So there's consciousness there, everything changes. How do we explain that? The answer is, I don't know. I wish I know. People sometimes ask me a question, I'm always pleased to say, I don't know. So at least I tried to answer the questions. And that is the answer to a whole bunch of things in life. The idea is that came out of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics which was at this thing called the Solvay Conference in 1917, the major thing that came out of it was this whole idea about collapsing quantum waves of consciousness. What they suggested, there's a guy named Schrödinger who created this whole concept about waves of probability, that, you know, since I've been coming to centers like this, and for as long as I've been an observer, I hear so many people talk about this whole idea about potential, unlimited potential, that we can do or be or say or whatever, we can accomplish anything that we want to accomplish. We've been talking about that for a long time. Quantum physics might try to explain consciousness in terms of a bunch of collapsing waves of probability. Do you know how your nervous system works? Your nervous system is continually sampling your environment at 40 cycles per second. So 40 cycles, 25 milliseconds. Every 25 milliseconds, we are sampling this environment around us. I'm looking at D, and every 25 seconds, I'm taking new data in. It only takes me about 2 of those, so 50 milliseconds roughly, to take in that, oh, that's D, you know, for my process to my mental concept, my mental mechanisms to go through all of that and to create my reality. But it does so out of the paradigms that I have, the views I love D, and so I'm really happy to see her. Maybe someone else hates your guts, and they have a total different reaction to it. The fact of the matter is that we don't see the world as we are. We see as the world is. We see it as we are. How else do you explain politicians? You can get two people sitting right next to each other, listening to the same politician, and one person says, "Oh God, I hate that person," and the other says, "Oh, that's the best thing that's ever happened," you know, blah blah blah. That says a lot more about those people than the politician himself, themselves, you know. So that's something that we see on a daily basis, over and over and over. What is the absolute reality? You know, who knows in that case? Who knows? But we are continually collapsing waves of consciousness. That's what this image is all about. So Schrödinger comes along and says that consciousness, or our reaction to it, is a continual wave of possibilities. That tonight, you could have come here, or you could have gone bowling, or you could have gone whatever it is, trap shooting, or pool shooting, or robbing cars, whatever it is that you like to do for recreation.
Shooting, something.
Yeah, you could be out doing that. And Steve, probably that's where he wanted to go. Can't get up here anyway. So, but once you make the choice, I'm going to do this, you collapse all those other possibilities and they don't exist anymore. But before you made a choice, they did exist, right? They did exist. I could have gone anywhere tonight, and here I am. What's wrong with me, right? That I ended up here. But that's a choice that you make. So once you make that choice, you are collapsing all these other waves of potential, and you are making a choice, and that choice manifests itself. So you're here tonight because you chose to do that. You could be somewhere else, and you collapsed all sorts of quantum waves. Life is really about choices, and as we go through life, we are presented continually with all of these various choices. Life is all about choice. From moment to moment to moment to moment, we're making choices. You can choose right now to say, I've had enough, I'm getting out of here, and get up and leave. And that's your choice if you could do that. And then you collapse all the possibilities of just the amazing things that are going to happen in the next 12 minutes. Does that hold you for attention? Everybody gets up and leaves. Oh, yeah. So this idea, that's what this really is all about. We've got these waves of probability all around us, and as we travel these oceans, these waves are coming up. We're surrounded by all these possibilities, and we choose these possibilities, and when we do, those possibilities appear. The universe is about noticing, about consciousness. The controlling factor, as the Tao tells us and as quantum physics both tell us, is your consciousness and your ability to choose. Yeah, that's why you're here tonight. That's why you are in whatever state you find yourself in life, because of choices that you've made. Does that mean that life doesn't happen to you, that things externally don't affect? Of course those things affect you. And the only thing you've got left is your our ability to respond to those things. How do I respond to them? So it's not what happens to you in life is not the important thing. The important thing in life that happens is how you handle, how you react to what happens to you. All of this is all common sense, but it helps, I think, sometimes to pull it all together into one concept. Although I probably wouldn't call this presentation one concept. But waves, particles, and consciousness. The universe from the very beginning, well, not the very beginning, but from the beginning of science, of human inquiry, of structured human inquiry, the invention of philosophy, et cetera, we have been arguing, not me personally, but a whole bunch of people have been arguing about what is the real nature of the universe. Is it particles? Is it a bunch of stuffed particles? An ancient philosopher named Democritus would say, yeah, that's what the universe is all about. It's about all these particles that are kind of running around, they kind of smash into each other, and boom, they create John. But what we are finding out now is it particles or is it this wave of probability? It's both. We get to choose. We are continually offered with this buffet. We're like kids in a candy store. We can choose anything that we want, basically, and when we choose that, that's what pops into our existence. So, in summary, if I had to summarize what we're talking about tonight, I might say we are curious beings with active minds. And the thing we are endowed by consciousness with our Creator. And that consciousness connects us to, because at the very essence of who we are, if we think we are these physical bodies, we're in for a big surprise because they're going away someday. And the essence of who we are is really our consciousness, our mind. That is what connects us with divine. I think there's a beautiful metaphor. If you ever been in a room, now I spent some time in the military, and I was up in the Alaskan Aleutian Islands for quite a while. And the Marines used to use these old Quonset huts just to shoot off guns and things. So they were riddled with holes. And you'd go into one of these Quonset huts on a summer day, and the sunlight would be pouring through all these bullet holes. So you're getting all of these rays of light. Those are all individual rays of light, but the source is the sun, right? The source is just one. That's us. We're like those individual rays of light. We think somehow we're separated from the oneness of the truth, but we're not. We're not. That, again, is an illusion. That's what our reality is, an illusion. So our curious minds try to extend beyond this physical limitations that we have to the very corners of the universe as we search for truth. That's what the Tao is, that's what quantum physics is about, that's what Einstein's theories of relativity are all about. And the whole idea is the real big questions. The question, we are questioning beings. We look up in the sky and we wonder, how do I connect to all of that, to this universe? What is that all about? And what am I all about? How do I relate to that? How does that relate to me? Is there some connection? And why am I here? Those kind of very profound questions. I don't have answers to any of those questions for you individually. Sorry, so you got to go figure that out. If that was your expectation, sorry, I disappointed you. I can't give you that because the really big questions are for your consciousness and for the creation of your own individual universe. Now, connecting the in here with the out there, what René Descartes said, this res cogitans, this idea about the in here, res cogitans, versus res extensa, which is this external reality out there, that the connecting tissue between the two of them is our choices, is our consciousness. So that is really the key, is thought. Thoughts are things. Boy, thoughts are really things, because thoughts determine our realities. Now, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. Alias Nin said that. That's a phrase that I've been hearing in Science of Mind for, 25 years, since practically from the time I got involved with this. But it wasn't just coming from Science of Mind. It's coming from many of the great teachings of the world. And creating a world that works for ... On our website here, and I happen to be very familiar with our website, but on our website here, one of the slides, we've got these rotating images, and one of them talks about creating a world that works for everyone. That comes from the science of mind, the management or the team or whatever you want to call it, the central authority, that we want to create a world that works for everyone. How do we do that? How do we do that? We might wrap in the idea about be the change that you want to see. We might say something like that. But in the but let's get real for just a second. Is it really possible for me to make the world make a world that works for everyone? You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I think if I said, yeah, I can do that, then I have to kind of ignore a lot of nasty stuff that's going on in the world. There's a lot of, I can't deny that there are evil people in this world. There are people who want to do harm to other people, and they do it, and they're very justified in doing that. So I can go about my life, I can be the best person that I can be for me. I can approach the world with love and with compassion and dignity, and treat everyone I meet with dignity and with love. And I think I'm kind of done at that point. I think I've kind of done my part. But I'm not going to delude myself into suggesting that I can change the mind of everyone in the world, and just because I'm a good person, the world will notice and will adjust their behavior accordingly. That ain't happening. Pretty sure that isn't happening. So while this is a worthwhile goal, a noble goal, I wish that mankind would evolve to that point, but we ain't there yet. I don't believe that we're really there yet. So what can we do as individuals? We as individuals can declare our own truth. And every day of my life for the past 20, 25 years, as I move throughout my day, I declare my individual truth, which is I'm really thirsty. That is my individual truth. But there's another individual truth that I tell myself every day, and it represents my covenant with life. An agreement, this is a conscious agreement about how I want to approach the world, the universe, my life, those important people around me, and also my relationship with myself. And it says that I'm healthy, successful, wealthy, intelligent, beautiful, witty, capable, powerful, loving, and happy. That I stand in the truth of who I am, and I joyfully embrace the boundless possibilities of who I am becoming. That I bring the best of who I am to whatever I do. That I live with honor and integrity. That I approach every day with a smile, an open heart, an attitude of gratitude, and a continuous sense of wonder and awe. That I love, honor, and protect my children and those entrusted to my care, and I teach them through my loving example about the goodness and the endless beauty of life. I use my talents, resources, and abilities to enhance the lives of other people. I maintain my sense of humor, I continually learn and grow, and I accept complete responsibilities for the outcomes in my life that are the result of choices that I have made. That is my declaration of independence from slavery to ideas that do not serve me. That is my declaration of how I want to become the change that I want to see in the world. I hope that tonight gave you some sort of insight into the nature of consciousness, into the nature of reality, a little bit of information about the Tao, about quantum physics, and how they all converge at the same point, and the pivot point is consciousness. Thank you very much for your consciousness tonight. I look forward to seeing you again. God bless you. Namaste. Okay, shut up now. Get out.